Well, good morning, everybody. If you're just tuning in, we tried to go live, and apparently they don't want us talking about what's going on in Britain. I think that's what's going on. I reset my internet. It's not working. Well, my internet's working. Everything's fine. I speed tested my internet, 50 megabits per second upload and download speeds. I reset my computer. I changed the stream keys and everything else on the back end. It's YouTube that's the problem. And apparently, this is not limited to YouTube's typical, in other words, I went on the down detector and I did not see any reports of any problems on YouTube. So apparently, they're even shadow banning any reports that there are any problems with YouTube's streaming capabilities. Now, I don't want to believe that this is specific just to my channel. It could be, though, or it could be specific to anyone talking about what's going on in the United Kingdom, Britain, with the riots. They don't want the truth to come out. Welcome to World Gone Wild, August 9th, 2024. I've pre-recorded this show now because we cannot get online at this point to live stream. So I'll have to upload this pre-recorded show. We need to talk about some of these things. And we need to talk about facial recognition. We need to talk about everything that's going on right now in the world. I think we have a solution to facial recognition. You ready for this? Now, tongue in cheek here, but maybe we should all grow our hair out like Slash from Guns N' Roses. Of course, I'm just kidding, but it's getting to the point now, all joking aside, where things are getting weird, aren't they? Now, understand that all these things that happen around the world are the catalyst by which they will bring in biometric facial recognition. They'll say that it's necessary. They'll say that it's needed in order to move forward and to make sure everybody's safe, right? Now, all joking aside, we're going to get into some pretty touchy subjects today. If you haven't heard about these riots going on in Britain, we're going to cover some of that today. Now, the headlines are trying to couch this as some kind of a race war. But the truth is that this has very little to do with race. This is all about immigration. And millions of people on an island, essentially, a large island, are fed up with the immigration policies that are infringing on their rights. Here's the scene from Britain. The quality of life that people have enjoyed for many centuries is now going down the tubes. Everybody knows it, but the people in control don't want to change it. This isn't about race. This is about country. Now, I'm puzzled because how does immigration even happen? How does illegal immigration even happen on an island? Apparently, there's many avenues to get across the ocean for these people, which just goes to show you that the government is making it much easier to do. Because all they'd have to do is put a Navy out there, a Coast Guard. All they'd have to do is have checkpoints coming in into the country and check everything for people coming in illegally. But instead, the policies allow these people to come in. We're also going to get into police corruption today and talking chimps and many other headlines. Now, let's start with this situation in Britain, because if you're fed up with your country being taken over by illegals, now they're saying you're a racist. Can you believe this? Let's listen to a little bit of this.
In the UK on Saturday, and it was expected that there would be some more today on Sunday, but they really have degenerated into perhaps even more violence than we saw a day earlier. This is in Tamworth in this evening. This is just outside Birmingham, the UK's second city, where, as you say, the mob there tried to and succeeded in setting fire to a Holiday Inn Extra, which has been housing.
Now they're couching this and they're saying that, oh, this is, these people are burning down structures and everything. And yes, they are. But look at the demeanor of, even this news reporter, just kind of ignoring the whole bigger picture of why this is happening. People are sick and tired of paying for people that aren't here legally. They're sick and tired of being second-class citizens. Now, all this is by design. They want this violence. They want this. They want the violence so they can come in and do biometric face ID. This is what this is all about. Same thing's happening here in the States. We're a little bit further along. We are now biometrically identifying illegals. That was something Trump also promised to do, during his second administration. And so this is also being rolled out in our American airports, face recognition and biometric scanning. So they have to repeat the same playbook over there. They decentralize and destabilize. Well, destabilize is probably the word. The immigration. They destabilize society with illegal immigration. And then they offer a solution, which is, let's identify all these people. So it's coming. I'm sure after this is all said and done, this will be something that becomes mainstay in the UK. Unreal. Now, I don't want to make you guys have to wait for this chimp story. We're going to play this chimp story now. Astonishing videos capture chimpanzees saying actual human words. Now, these videos are older videos. They've been around for a while. These chimps. But what's really at play here? Are apes crossing over with humans? Like in the Planet of the Apes? Well, kind of. And I'll explain that to you. Notice that many of the vaccines over the last century have been cultured or created inside of animals, like monkeys, chickens, and sheep. And then these vaccines are injected or were injected into humans. So you can imagine that science might be trying the opposite thing on apes. In other words, growing these vaccines in humans and then injecting them into apes. Look at this video and listen to this.
Can you say mama? Mama? Mama. Is this for mama? Mama. You love your mama? You love mama? Mama. Here, sweetie. This is for...
Now that is creepy. That sounds like something right out of Planet of the Apes. That's not a doctored video. This is just a random person with a chimp. There are several such videos. I'd never seen these videos before, but the chimps are speaking. Wow. Now, how is this possible? Why is this ape able to speak? Well, I don't know the answer to that. But what's clear to me is that these people in our reality, humans, are acting dumber, while apes seem to be getting smarter. In fact, the entire plot of the Planet of the Apes was about a simian flu, an ape flu. Simian means monkey, so monkey flu that crossed over into humans. And it gives, they come up with this cure, and the cure gives apes ability to speak, and they take over the world. And the same thing happened in real life. The polio vaccines were contaminated with simian flu. It crossed over into humans. It caused many deaths of many, many people in the 1950s. In other words, a monkey strain crossed over into humans because of where the vaccine was grown in. And now we know why Abraham Lincoln was pictured as an ape in one of the Planet of the Apes films, because Abraham Lincoln is really Abraham Lincoln, the first needle president. Yes, the hypodermic needle was invented and used on injured Union soldiers during his presidency to administer morphine, opiates. And the needle is the gateway to chimerism, the melding of animal and human. In fact, we found that the Washington Mall and Monument form a giant aerial needle pointing right at the Lincoln Memorial. The alignment is seen clearly in Google Earth for those who bother to go and look, and it aligns to precisely 88 degrees, which is a portal number. So all the symbolism is there. The portal is the needle, opening humans to chimerism. Now let's get into some of these police corruption stories. Now, if you're just tuning in, this is a pre-recorded show because we were having internet problems. Apologies for having to pre-record a live show, but YouTube does not want people to get online live, probably because of the riots going on in the UK, is my guess. I've seen this happen before when stuff's going on in the world. They like to shut everything down. Now, let's get into some police corruption stories. This lady, you ready for this? She got stabbed 20 times. Half of the stab wounds were in the back of her head, and they ruled this a suicide. Well, let's read this, you guys. Suicide ruling for teachers. 20 stab wounds may be re-examined as family secures potential major win. Yeah, it's sad that these families have to go through all this to find out who really killed their daughter. But look at this. There's actually, look at all the stab wounds are half of them are in the back of the head. How did she stab herself to death? It's silly on its face, but people think these corrupt police departments, corrupt pathologists, essentially do what they want to do to cover up for whoever they want to cover up for. Now, what happened to this woman? Well, there's obviously a much deeper plot here that none of us will probably ever figure out. The family may have clues, but they've probably been, they've probably been told, oh, don't be a conspiracy theorist. So they're never going to find the answers. I'm sure if I talked to this family, we could get down to the bottom of it, right? We could figure this out. Or one of you, if you talk to this family, because you'd follow the chain of custody, you would follow the evidence, follow the money. Whoever this woman was dating or whoever she encountered had probably something to do with this. She probably got mixed up with the wrong people. And then they were related to the forensic pathologists and all these people. There was some kind of connection, and they covered this up for them, or they were told to cover this up. They even got a second opinion. There was a second pathologist, same result, couldn't find. They said, oh, well, something's wrong. Oh, you think? Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. What a sad story of police corruption. Now, not all police departments are corrupt, obviously, but in this instance, this woman, it cost her her life and no justice. Let's read a little bit of this story. We're going to get into Sonia Massey as well. Black woman, not far from here where I live, shot right in the face in her own home after she called the police for help. Let's read this story here. A pathologist's controversial ruling that Ellen Greenberg, a 27-year-old Philadelphia woman whose death by 20 stab wounds was a suicide, will receive a new review after Pennsylvania Supreme Court agreed to hear arguments from her parents and their attorney. The family learned the court had agreed to hear their case on Tuesday. Greenberg's mother told Fox News the court will examine whether the parents, as executors of her estate, have legal standing to challenge the medical examiner's findings. So they're trying to dismiss this by saying that the family does not have legal standing. Wow. Last year, a panel of appellate court judges ruled against the parents' request. So even the appellate court judges are in on it. And they would not reclassify Greenberg's death from suicide to homicide or undetermined. So, prayers for this family going through all this. 20 stab wounds, half of them were in the back of the head, and they call it a suicide. And now it's time to talk about Sonia Massey. If you haven't already seen it, there's video of this on YouTube, and it will turn your stomach as you see the whole situation caught on camera. This woman invited these officers into her home. Oh, they're not even going to show a picture of her. Let's see. There's her family there. Let's see if we can scroll down here and get a picture of her. Essentially, what ended up happening was, look, they're not even showing her picture anymore. That is just so sad. And of course, all the racial all the racial people are hopping in on this, making this about race. I don't think this is really so much about race. This is about something else. There's partially a racial aspect to this, but there's much more to this. Okay. So what happened? Let's break all this down. She invited cops into her home after she suspected a burglar, except she became the target. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and type in her information here and see if we can get some images of this woman so she can be remembered. This is just so sad. And the whole video shows it. It depicts it of what actually happened. It looks like they've scrubbed the internet of most of the images of this poor woman. It's already been politicized. We're going to get to the deeper parts of this today and talk a little bit about this. So what happened? Let's talk about this. She invited police into her home. She thought there was a burglar, but likely it was some kind of episode of mental illness, a moment of mental illness for the fact that she even called the cops. There was something wrong. And the cop came in, and I'll explain that later. I'm not just assuming she was crazy, because the cop should have notified. They should have recognized what was happening, okay, instead of jumping to the defense mode. But anyway, she comes into the home, and she was shot in the face after she rebuked the officer in the name of Jesus Christ. She rebuked him. And why? Because there's no reason why, really. There was really, when I looked at the video, she just had something in her spirit that said to rebuke him. He had been asking her for her identification, and something in her said, I rebuke you. He told her to turn off the pot of boiling water, which she then grabbed off of the stove, and things devolved from there. She was about 10 to 12 feet away from the officer, behind an island counter in the kitchen. The officer, after she said, I rebuke you, the officer assumed that she was going to throw the water on him, which I don't know if I buy that. I think he was more angry that she rebuked him. She then knelt down behind the counter and took cover and put the pot of water on top of her head. The cop then pulled a gun and shot her in the face. Well, he already had the gun out, pointing at her. Now, as the details of this case emerge, we realize that Sonia Massey did have some kind of mental breakdown. The cops failed to pick up on this because they weren't able to ID her. And the cop obviously seemed like he was triggered at her rebuke, and he saw the pot of water as a threat, even though it was so far away. You can't launch a pot of boiling water that far, and even if you could, it's a slow-moving projectile. Cop could have easily got out of the way. And after the water was expelled from the pot, they could have easily subdued her and put her in cuffs until they figured out what the heck was going on. Okay. So I don't buy this whole pot of water was a threat. And what failed here, what seemed to fail, was that the officers did not pick up on the mental illness aspect. And we also all have to agree that there's a lot more people walking through life pretty much high all the time. There are a lot of people walking through this life high all the time. And when some people get high, they also present as being mentally ill on some level. They don't follow police instructions very well, do they? This is why it's so important to be sober, because you may find yourself in a situation like this. Remember the fishing game officer who got spooked? Remember I was catching fish on the McCalmy River? He got spooked and he nearly pulled his gun on me, told me to walk in front of him, told me to put my hands on the top of the truck for a fish. Now you know I wasn't hyperbolizing. I could feel his energy. I could feel his fear. And I was one argument away from probably having the same end. So what happened to Sonia? Well, they did have a history of like wellness checks, mental health. In fact, within the week of those officers coming, she had called for some kind of wellness check. And for some reason, the system failed to alert the officers to this. It shouldn't be by the person's ID. It should be by addresses. And going to that address, there should have been some kind of labels or tags about the history of any kind of medical or, well, I guess medical wouldn't talk to them, right? Because that would be under HIPAA laws. Maybe private. I don't know. But what about the officer's partner? What about the partner? Well, he's now saying, well, the guy who shot her is now saying he thought that the rebuke in the name of Jesus indicated intent to kill him. Whoa. And what about the partner? Because he didn't join in the shooting. The partner did not. Even though many officers are trained to do this. They're trained that once the first officer starts popping off rounds, then they too start popping off rounds. I believe this is probably the general rule that they have for each other. I don't know, or maybe it's a reflex. I don't know, but I've seen so many police shootings where not just one person shoots, they all shoot. And maybe it's because it's easier to defend 3 officers pulling the trigger than it is one in court. I don't know what the process is behind that, but what caused this guy to pull the trigger to begin with? Well, obviously there were other hidden emotions at play. Was this a racial shooting? Maybe. Or maybe this was the programming. What do you mean? Well, the constant reminder in the media about race relations. And it fosters mistrust during these interactions between races. And so each side gets triggered. Why did she rebuke him? Well, maybe because he was white. Up to that point, he really didn't seem to do anything that warranted being rebuked unless there was something in her spirit that saw something in his heart. I don't know. Maybe she saw the future. Maybe she saw her death. Maybe this was some kind of weird backward circle. I don't know. But something in her caused her to rebuke him. Absolutely, this shooting was unwarranted. This guy's awaiting trial. But what caused this? Now, if there was any racial stuff online in this guy's social media profile, we would have seen it by now, right? Like if he had some ties to some kind of groups or some comments he made on social media about race, we would have seen that by now, wouldn't we have? So, is this guy a racist? Not on social media. So what happened? Well, again, the video's on YouTube for those of you that have the stomach, but it appears as though the officer seemed to be triggered by Sonia's inability to ID herself. Because she was not following orders and shuffling around, the officer immediately became very suspicious. She was also unable to clearly define the threat that she called about. She was in some ways acting a little bit elusive. And it was probably because of her mental state. She could have been high. It's very unclear. It was almost as if the officer began to see her as the threat, as his aggression began to focus on her for not complying with his questioning. And the video really shows just how quickly a person's life can end. Because it started out with a friendly and compassionate police call, him asking her if she was okay. What did you see that was suspicious? He was helpful. And then he turned into a stone cold killer in the span of about 5 to 10 minutes. I couldn't even believe the video. So here's the update on Sonia Massey. This happened weeks and weeks ago, but it was time to talk about this. Now let's get into some of this other stuff. We're going to talk about EPA corruption. Once again, science has failed. What do I mean? Well, we still have Roundup on the market, And a lot of people have won a lot of money because of damage that they've experienced from Roundup. But the EPA decides to ban a different weed killer. Not Roundup, but Dactythol, citing risks to unborn children. Now, what is the failure and corruption here? Well, how did this Dactythol ever get on the market? How did Roundup ever get on the market? Where was the ban of these substances before they ever came to market? Didn't they test all this first? Doesn't science tell us that we test all this stuff for you guys before it comes to the market? Well, obviously that didn't happen. And now they found that even very, very low levels of this particular substance called Dactythol, it was used for weed killer, and it's been around since 1983, is causing birth defects. It's a pesticide, ethylene dibromide. Wow. So, serious risks to unborn babies of pregnant women who are exposed to the chemical during or including living in and around areas where Dactythol has been used. Wow. So, just because they say something is safe doesn't mean it's safe, because sometimes they come out later and say it's not safe. So you have to go with your own belief systems. Now, let's get into corruption with home ownership. Did you know that insurance companies can now spy on you? They can now spy on you with drones. Now, I don't know about you, but this is creepy. They're looking for reasons to take all the money that you paid into your home insurance and delete your policy. This is Business Insider. My insurance company spied on my house with a drone. Then the real nightmare began. Now, this guy goes on to say that essentially they found some mold on his roof that was easily abated had he just been notified about it. And they said, oh, there's mold on your roof. We're canceling your policy. So all the thousands of dollars he paid in over the years is gone. They don't have to pay out. They essentially cut their liability. How did they find this out? With some kind of drone footage. Wow, here's another one. Separate story. California resident. She spent a couple $100,000 on remodeling her home, and then her insurance dropped her. Now, here's the problem. If you're in a mortgage, you have to have house insurance. So without house insurance, you don't have a mortgage. Can they confiscate your house at this point? I don't know. But this is crazy. They're literally flying around in drones. Now, this woman accused him of flying a drone over her house, but they said, no, we have proprietary aerial photography. What are they talking about? Where are they getting this information? Proprietary aerial imagery of her home is how they found the clutter. In this case, they found clutter, and they said it was a liability and dropped her from the insurance. And this is how they're coming after people's homes. This is why we came up with a plan, didn't we? On a previous video. You don't need to mortgage a home, you guys. 2 people making minimum wage can save $100,000 in 3 years. Those people could be married. They could be brother and sister. 2 people making minimum wage, working 40 hours a week, can save $100,000 in 3 years if you live in a studio apartment paying $500 a month rent and a few $100s in utilities, and you're getting you have an EBT card that you can use for food. And you can literally save, I think the number we came up was $3,500 a month or $3,800 a month. Multiply that out times 3 years, and you literally can save for a house without a mortgage. Then you don't have to have house insurance till they come up with some dumb law that requires it. So this is what's happening. This is what's going on. I can't even believe some of this stuff, you guys. I can't even believe what we're dealing with. Now, you ready for this? Here's another police corruption story. Guess what? Utility companies now are saying that they're going to rat you out to the police if your electric bill goes past a certain level and you're flagged. Does this sound like freedom to you? Are we really in the land of the free, where your electric company sees a spike or a bump in your electric usage, and all of a sudden the cops show up to your house? This is an AP article. Utility company proposal to rat out hidden marijuana operations to police raises privacy concerns. Of course this does. Of course this does. Wow. You know, there used to be an element of fairness when it came to policing, wasn't there? Remember that? I remember growing up, I was like, wow, this is fair because they can't entrap me. Because the police had to do their job to catch you, right? And it was kind of a great system because only the real criminals were focused on by the police, because they knew they didn't have the advantage to just go after simple people, because it was too hard to try and there was no reward to it. And so they would spend their time on the real criminals. I remember back then, certain things weren't allowed by the police. Like you weren't allowed to hide behind a billboard to catch someone speeding. They called that entrapment. Well, now things have changed. They can go online, they snoop around in your social media posts, they look at your videos to see if you're doing something wrong, and people rat you out. Now I don't use cannabis, but do I want people who grow it in the privacy of their own homes, do I want them to get raided by a snitching utility? No, of course not. Growing this stuff is a lot of work and a lot of investment. And it does have some medicinal properties for some people, in my opinion. The real issue here isn't about the growing of the plants. It's the growing of the plants outside of the tax and rules system. This is what has law enforcement so angry and our government so angry. They can't stand it that people are actually making money without paying taxes in any way, shape, or form. In any way, shape, or form. If you cut your finger off and wanted to sell it, they would want to tax that too. Unreal. So I'll put links to all these stories, of course, like I always do. Let's get into the Starliner update. Have the astronauts been rescued yet? Nope. You guys are going on 2 months in space. 2 months in space. I can't even believe this. Now, is any of this even real? This sounds like a bad science fiction movie. Like I could think of the dialogue in my head right now of what's going on with this. I can imagine a whole movie of this poor Indian woman and this white guy trapped in space inside this little tiny capsule, and all the different stuff going on, hallucinations and whatever else happens from being in this tight space. Now on this channel, we ask questions, don't we? So this is why you guys come here. And so this is a little bit weird. These people are obviously long overdue from when they were originally supposed to be in this capsule, right? So what are they eating? Haven't they run out of food by now? What about water? Are they recycling urine? Like, what's going on here? Why doesn't this article mention food or water supplies in such a dire situation? What a weird story, you guys. What a weird story. Now, I want to finish up today's show with some confirmation, because I like to show the confirmation of things we've covered in the past, so you guys know that we're not crazy. Many of you by now have noticed that the Olympic track is lavender. Look at this. It says it right here. The color is mainly an aesthetic choice, as purple, blue, and green make up the palette for the competition venues at this year's games. The design actually incorporates 3 separate colors: lavender for the track itself, darker purple for the surface areas, and gray for the exterior curves on each end. This is the Olympic track. It's lavender. What's the big deal? Well, lavender, of course, is the name of the Israeli military biometric Face ID company that is currently tracking down Hamas terrorists by using face prints and face scans and cross-referencing that with their cameras on their drones. Seek and destroy, the Terminator scenario. We talked about this several weeks before the Olympics started. Also, Lavender is the Snoop Dogg song, which depicted the fake assassination of Trump. The video featured another clown who got his ear bit off when he was 666 years old. Michael Rappaport, he's in the music video as well. And Trump is depicted as a clown as well in that music video. Lavender. So lavender is a thing. We also found the numbers 666 in the color lavender on a previous show. Maybe I'll put a link to that in the description. So that's the show for today, you guys. Sorry there was no chat, but I'm probably with you in the chat right now as this is premiering. And so there you go. So we will not stop. We will always get together regardless of what obstacles that YouTube throws at us. I love each and every one of you. Have a great rest of your day, you guys. Take care.